What is up, people? It's Dave and Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another tech review. This is our new segment on the website and on our YouTube channel where we're checking out the latest tech, from headphones to microphones and all sorts in between. As I've said before, we listen to a ton of music for album reviews primarily, so checking out the latest headphones, earphones and discussing them feels like a fairly natural thing to do in this channel. So with this being a metal channel, we will be discussing various metal albums that we've checked out with our time during our time with the headphones in question. And for this review, we are checking out the HifiMAN HE6se version 2 open back over-ear planar magnetic headphones. So, first off, just big thanks to HifiMAN for sending these headphones to us to check out. Massively appreciated. Thank you so much. We are going to get into some specifications first on these headphones. So this is the HE6se's version 2. These are actually a collaboration between HifiMAN and a company called Adorama, who do a lot of kind of electrical goods, high-end audio equipment. This is the V2, so this is the upgrade to the original HE6 and the HE6se, and our high-end, full-sized, open-back, over-ear headphones with the planar magnetic drivers. These are completely wired, these headphones. These are not Bluetooth or anything like that. The HE6, as far as I know, are discontinued, but the HE6se version 1s are still available to buy. The main kind of differences seem to be primarily in the design, so the color is different. The version 2s are now a kind of midnight blue around the ear cups, with the version 1 being black. The headband has also had an upgrade. The grille is slightly different and a bit of a tweak to the sound as well. Price-wise, these are coming in at between £600 and £650 British pounds, depending on where you buy them. So Amazon, for example, in the UK, have got these listed about 610 at the moment. These originally retailed over $1,000 when they first came out. I think they were about $1,800 in America. So they have come down a little bit since then. And Duncan and I have had a couple of weeks with these just to kind of get used to them, the feel and the sound and stuff.
Like passing a kid between divorced parents.
It really was.
Dave had a week with them, then I had a week with them, and then Dave got them back again. So
yeah, it really was. So before we get into the kind of sound and stuff, we'll get into the other bits and pieces. So packaging wise, fairly standard in terms of the kind of HifiMAN kind of packaging. So you've got the usual kind of user guides, warranty cards, all that sort of stuff. You've got this cable in here as well, this rather odd looking cable that comes in the 3.5 millimeter left and right cable, which terminates to a 4-pole XLR with an additional adapter from XLR4 to a 6.3 millimeter jack. That is a 1/4 inch jack to most folk. The cable is the cable is a weird material. It's like a fucking catheter, or like, I don't know, like a weird, really bad like sausage skin. I don't know.
It's it's
very medical looking.
It is. I kind of like. There's part of me that kind of digs the design though, in that right. You're like, is one thing I never think about.
Yeah.
Like ever is like you take cables for granted until you see one that's different. And then you're like, why is that like that? So yeah, we've had a few conversations in the background about this.
So cable. It's a dual 3.5. So you've got a cable goes to each ear, then you've got this XLR with another adapter taking it to a 1/4 inch jack, and I've got another adapter on here taking it down to the 3.5 as well. So a lot of cable in there. It's cable wise, I'm not completely sold on it, to be honest. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing for me, and it does kind of kink and bend quite easily, and doesn't really go back into its like
But I
original
originally
shape.
thought if it was maybe designed, I thought the sheath on the outside was maybe to add additional protection to the cabling inside. You know, the
Yeah,
avoidance of like any sort of breakage or damage to the
could
internal
be.
cable.
Yeah,
But then, very much like yourself, I found at least 2 occasions when I was listening to it where the cable kind of kinked up a little bit, and I was like,
yeah,
so
yeah,
probably
yeah.
shouldn't do that.
Oh, sure. Inside, obviously, you've got the lovely this
Duncan's
kind of
bed sheets,
satin.
say it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like something for 50 Shades of Grey here. With the usual kind of memory foam kind of holding the headphones in as well. So again, feels really nice packaging. It looks good when you open the box and stuff as well. The other thing just to kind of mention is you don't necessarily need like a headphone amplifier to run these headphones. You can just plug them into a standard headphone socket, but using them through an amp will give you more power and kind of optimum sound ultimately. So you'll get the most out of these headphones using them with an amp. In terms of the design and the kind of build quality of the headphones, as I mentioned, these are mainly black, but they've got a kind of midnight blue kind of outer ear cup, and it looks very nice visually. What I would say is the only thing is with that finish, it does show like fingerprints and stuff. So if you're like me, I like things to be clean. So I was like constantly with a wee polishing cloth, like, well, better get rid of that fingerprint. So that kind of annoyed me a little bit. It
I
looks
wish I'd
nice.
known that before I handed them back to you.
Yeah, look at the state of these. Yeah, there is that, but it has a black memory foam headband, which is a kind of faux leather. Again, fully adjustable, so you can change the size. We've got this kind of black, what they call a yoke system on the side there, just from the ear cups to the headband, and again a metal kind of grill on the outside. The earphones themselves are kind of hybrid of that kind of synthetic leather on the outside, and then you've got the kind of soft cloth covered foam material on the inside, which is like nice and plushy and soft when you're pressing it. And the earphones do kind of move ever so slightly as well, so you've got a bit of rotation in there as well. But in terms of the design, the build, look pretty good. Yourself, do you think? Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of, we're going to probably mention this on any headphones that we ever cover, I have ear stretchings of 18 millimeters, so my earlobes obviously protrude a bit larger than the average person,
Yeah.
unless you have really long earlobes. I mean, that might happen, I don't know. So to me, that's always a concern. These ones, there was an, compared to, we've already reviewed another model from this company.
Yeah.
I would say these ones were actually more comfortable on, but I was more aware that I was wearing headphones.
Right. Okay.
So there was a trade-off there, in that this one really did feel like someone had massaged and put down like a nice velvet pillow for my ear. It was like I was getting the full treatment, like the full service.
Yeah.
But at all times, I was very conscious that I was wearing a pair of headphones. Whereas the previous ones, after about 25 minutes, 30 minutes, I'd kind of forgotten they were on. These ones, they're always very acutely aware they were on.
Yeah, I'd agree. The weight of these cables is about 470 grams. So these are about 100 grams heavier than the Deva Pros that we reviewed earlier. And they do feel like they've got a little bit more weight to them, but kind of like yourself, I didn't feel like it was that heavy that I was going to fall over or anything like that. You know what I mean? They do have a decent kind of clamp on them as well, but it didn't feel too tight, you know, when I was wearing these for kind of prolonged periods. The headband I found on this set were much softer. I didn't feel like there was quite as much pressure on the top of my head. Again, I used these for a good few hours, like I did the Deva Pros, and I felt fine with them. I didn't feel like I was having to adjust them all the time or move them. Didn't have any kind of sweating or heat around my ears either. They feel like you get a warmth, but it's not enough that I had to like take them off for a break or, you know, like let my ears breathe or anything like that. So on the comfort side of things, I would say these were very good. Do feel slightly heavier than the previous set that we reviewed, but it wasn't too much that I was like, oh, I need to take a break from these, if you know what I mean. They weren't that heavy, you know, that I had to remove them for any long periods of time. So on the sound front, we as I mentioned, these are open back headphones. So like the Deva Pros we reviewed, they're not like noise cancelling headphones that kind of contains a sound inside a closed off ear cup. So again, you'll hear a little bit of sound leaking out of these. That's quite normal with open back. You'll still be able to hear a lot of kind of noise around about you because they're not closed off. The open back headphones have, as I mentioned, these vents or grills, and again, this is to allow this kind of free passage of air around and through the ear cup and through the drivers, which is supposed to give you a more kind of natural sound. We, as we usually do, we checked out a classic metal album to go with this review, and again, we decided to pick something that we've listened to a lot, so we could compare how it sounds through the HE6se version 2s. The album we chose for this review was White Pony by the Deftones. Like I want to. So, as I mentioned earlier, if you're not using these through a headphone amp, then you probably will find that you'll have to crank the volume a bit more on whatever device you're using. But once you get the right volume for them, then you'll be good to go. And I think, to be honest, I don't know if you had the same experience, but the more kind of volume you have with these, the more you'll get out of them, I think. The more I felt I pushed the volume on them, the more detail and the more brightness you'll get from them. When it's at a kind of lower volume, you maybe find it's a little bit kind of muddy, but once I found that sweet spot, I found like they really came into their own. What about yourself? How did you get on with these? What did you think sound-wise on the HE6ses?
Yeah, similar to yourself. So once again, I was listening to this primarily wired directly through my Mac. Mm-hmm. So connected it straight in using the various contraptions that allowed me to plug it into my headphone socket.
Yeah.
And running them from there, but like my Mac can like go quite loud, which is why I like it. I like it that way, and I very much I never had at the max volume out with like a couple of strength tests against particular songs, but sitting about the 80%, 85% volume, almost everything sounded immaculate, and there was at no point where when kind of code switching from something on the heavier spectrum to something on the more poppy spectrum that I felt like, oh no, I need to turn the volume down, or no, I need to turn the volume up. It surprisingly held a very even balance when transitioning between different musical genres.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt initially with these that the kind of with the bass and the mid range, it felt very neutral. Like it's not overly pronounced, but it still has presence. It doesn't overstep the boundaries. The mid-range has a kind of slight push in the upper mids, so things like strings and brass really kind of pop, which I'll come back to. But again, it doesn't compromise the balance kind of overall. In the case of White Pony by the Deftones, when when the snare came in on Digital Bath,
ping!
Holy shit! It was I felt like I'd never heard it snap like that before.
Yeah,
like it felt really, really full-bodied, very, very breathy, and very detailed. The drivers on these headphones convey an exceptional amount of detail, which really drills down to the kind of smallest of subtleties. And that was really apparent on this album. Tracks like Teenager, for example, which has this kind of like old scratchy record playing in the background. You could hear every little crackle from it. Same with the cymbals. That the treble is really rich, really full. So things like a ride or a splash cymbal really cut through. I thought like this album sounded. I mean, this album sounds great anyway, but this album sounded terrific through these headphones. Again, kind of similar to the Deva Pros. Again, it really puts you in the middle of the album. Everything just kind of surrounds you, and you'll feel yourself kind of picking out small little details. But it didn't feel like it was lacking in heaviness either. You know, when those bigger kind of chunkier sections come in, you still get that punch, that impact from those parts of the album. Vocally though is where I found the sound just to be going to that next level. Chino has a very pronounced style, very distinctive.
Especially on this album where it is heavily affected.
It is, yeah, absolutely. I felt like these really emphasized that kind of character in his voice. It sounds very, very rounded, very smooth. It was almost kind of dreamlike when I was listening to it. But to be honest, anything involving Chino sounds great through these. Like I dipped into some Crosses and Team Sleep as well, and those albums sounded extraordinary through these headphones. But in terms of White Pony, I thought it sounded really rich sounding. Like that was the word that was coming to mind when I was listening to it. Like the sound was just super rich, super detailed. I was picking up little things from all over the place. And just very immersive. Like that's how I felt when I was listening to it. It's a very immersive kind of feeling when you're listening to anything through these headphones. And what did you think of White Pony through these bad boys?
So not related to the headphones at all. What I found out recently is that I have become an old man.
Oh,
and that old man attitude kicked in straight away when I was like that. I'm just going to jump on the old iTunes. There are other places out there where you can listen to albums, and I'm just going to swing in some White Pony because that's what we do. Only to realise that the digital world of albums is just fucking with my childhood. So the digital version of White Pony, which exists on the iTunes, opens with the Mini Maggot remix version of Back to School, which is not how White Pony opens.
No, I skipped that. I skipped that track.
That album never opened that way, and the frustration that came over my face almost imminently. Yes, the track sounded fucking amazing, but it's not how my album starts.
Agreed.
So that frustration parked to the side. Very much like yourself. This album is a hugely important album, like specifically if you're into music now. The White Pony influence, like specifically over, I'll be honest, over a ton of different genres, but most importantly metal, in the last 5 years has become very pronounced with this kind of shoegazy element, which they weren't the first band to do it, but they were the first band to really infuse it into a kind of more metal styling, and it is now endemic throughout the entirety of the genre. So going back was always going to be interesting to me because it's an album I've listened to many, many, many times. This album, through these headphones, sounds like it was recorded this fucking year. It's so... And Terry Date, man. Terry Date is a fucking wizard. Because it blew my mind how vibrant this sounded. Like, just everything, every little detail. This is also the first album where the band started using specifically Sims. There's where they brought in almost full time the guy who does their keys and all the rest to do like atmosphere and all the rest. And I remember not paying that much attention to it overall, but in this is hard not to.
Yeah,
it's prevalent throughout the whole thing. Listening to a Passenger, which features Maynard James Keenan, on those sections where you have these rich tone atmosphere which sits beautifully in the mix through the headphones. And what I did was very, very quickly while listening to it, when that track finished, I was writing with my Apple Pros, right in, play it again, and they just don't have the same pop at all. It just doesn't have the same vibrance, the same, and then Change in the House of Flies as well, which has this kind of weird kind of like these weird sounds in the background of almost kind of this trippy kind of music box that's been reversed and then slowly played, and all that thing. It just made this album sound so fucking modern. It was unbelievable.
Yeah,
very much like yourself. Like the guitars just sound heavier, the drums sound punchier, and Chino sounds amazing. Is it the best version of this album I listened to is through these headphones. It actually gave me like chills at times on certain tracks where like I was there the first time remember listening to his album for the very first time, and just going, "There's nothing like this," and I kind of felt the same listening to it now. When there's loads that is like, like White Pony now has become a instantly copied album, but still, like, listening to it through these headphones, it just felt like listening to it for the first time.
Yeah,
it was weird.
I totally agree. Yeah, the kind of the detail is so magnified.
Yeah.
That I started to notice things I'd never noticed before on albums. So after I listened to Deftones, I listened to some other metal stuff, and then I went to John Mayer's Continuum, which for me I think it's an absolutely stunningly produced album. But on the first track, the first track is Waiting on the World to Change, and there's a guitar plays one chord in the right ear, and it just lasts a second in the intro to that song. I had never noticed that ever. And I've listened to that album hundreds of times, never noticed it before. And then when I put them on, I was like, what? And I actually rewound it a few times. I was like, I have never heard that before. And it's just because it feels so much more pronounced in these headphones. It's not buried in the background. You can really hear it come through. I mentioned how kind of strings and brass sounded excellent through these. And that was kind of highlighted to me when I listened to the Elijah's I Loved, I Hated, I Destroyed, I Created, which is a very atmospheric post-hardcore album. It features a full string quartet, and it sounded unbelievable. That's an album that kind of gives me chills, and like listening to it through these headphones was just an absolute dream. Like, it really spacious, really open, great separation and instrumentation in the strings. Just sounded so rich. It just unbelievably good. I also went for something kind of non-metal as well. So I listened to a more kind of folky album, but it has strings on it as well. So I kind of kept that kind of incorporated. But I listened to Ray LaMontagne's Trouble album, which is an album that I really like. I've seen Ray live, and I think he's a fantastic songwriter. I'll be totally honest, I had a bit of an experience when I listened to that album. There are certain releases that you'll hear through these headphones, and it kind of takes you to another dimension. And I definitely had that when I was listening to this album. I found myself actually getting a bit emotional during it. I was listening to it, and I was like, whoa, I'm starting to kind of well up listening to this. And I was not expected at all, but it just kind of, it took me out of wherever I was, and I was just totally immersed in that album. And I think, like, after you've listened to a few albums with these headphones, you can tell what albums are just going to really be elevated when you hear them. Deaf Heaven's Infinite Granite was another album that I checked out.
Oh man.
Because it's filled with great textures and atmosphere, and again, it works perfectly with this release. They're very super clear, like very, very clear, very well balanced, not overly pronounced in any area, but very, I keep saying this word, but it's very rich sounding. And they did work very well across different genres as well. The ones that I tried, I thought everything sounded really good with these headphones. Did you check out anything else, or?
Oh, dude, I rinsed these, man.
Oh, did you?
When I had the chance, yeah. Because I was sitting on my computer, and almost all my music's on my computer.
Yeah.
So I was like literally like a kid in a sweet shop. Like a fat kid at a buffet. I was like, yes, fucking let's do this. I come right off White Pony, and the logical step for me was I Let It In and It Took Everything by Loathe.
Yeah.
Now that's an album that does all the dreaminess of White Pony, but gets heavy shit.
Yeah.
And this is where I was like, let's crank this. Let's see what these guys are made of. Very similar to White Pony, there are whole elements in this album I had never picked out before. Like whole sections of weird, trippy sounds in the background, which had just never like thrust themselves out. It's a more modern album for me anyway, so it's an album I've listened to a lot, but I haven't like dissected it forensically through like a decade plus of listening. It sounded fucking great. The heavy shit sounded heavy, which is the big thing for me. I then took these little guys out for a walk, metaphorically, not physically. Had to be wired to the computer, right? Level 42, running in the family. I was like, let's let's just see what the bass sounds on this. That bass took me for a walk. Once again, just like nice, vibrant. On the other end of the spectrum, I was like, let's go for something cheesy, funky, poppy. Let's boost it. Sounded fucking great. Like just like the synths, the balance between the synths, vocals, drum production, and the bass just sounded like wonderful. I checked out Silent Earthling by Three Trapped Tigers. That's my favorite Three Trapped Tigers album. It's fully instrumental, but it has everything in the kitchen sink is played on that album, and it sounded amazing. Like just like there are sections of space in that release that I had never really focused on as much, where things start to strip out and you're left with just like really echoey, distant sort of sounded phenomenal. Gary Newman's Pure from, I think that's 2001, which is an album I hadn't listened to in about the best part of a decade and a half, which just, I was like that, you know what, let's take those kind of spacey sort of weird ambient sounds and let's throw them at something quasi-metal. And it sounded great. The last album I listened to was For the Quirk. So the shits and the giggles, Dave.
Yeah.
I was going, let's see how this handles this. I'm very glad that you mentioned strings and brass sections and all the rest, because I listened to Dog Fashion Disco's Committed to a Bright Future. They're a band that obviously have a bit of the brass, a bit of the strings. They do a cover of Grease on that album. Everything once again sounded fucking great. Like there's a bit, and we'll get to it at the end. There's a bit where when you look at the price tag of a pair of headphones, you're like, what am I paying for?
Yeah.
What am I actually paying for?
Yeah.
And notwithstanding a few gripes I have specifically around the cable, which we'll get to at the end, this is what you're paying for. Like I had at least 3 or 4 albums sound markedly different and better through these headphones. Like to the point where they were noticeable. That I was listening to tracks going, I've never noticed that bit before.
Yeah.
Or I was listening to a bit going like that. This is like literally blowing my... The White Pony listen, I cannot stress enough. That album transformed for me. And that's an album I love. It was up there amongst my favourite albums ever made by one of my favourite bands that's ever existed. And on this listen, it melted my mind. And to give a bit of context, I did do the swap of the headphones. So I did listen to White Pony on the Bluetooth version of these headphones, and it sounded great. It didn't sound as good as this, and vice versa. I listened to From Mars to Sirius, which sounded even better in these headphones. So, I took my opportunity of having these headphones for a week for granted and made sure I listened to them to the max, Dave, the max.
Yeah, no complaints from me on the sound side of things. So let's get to the overall feelings on these headphones and ratings and stuff. For me, like, these are just sound wise, like I couldn't find anything to dislike sound wise about these. Just very, very clear. And sounded very good across multiple genres due to their kind of neutral kind of balance of frequencies. Very comfortable for long periods as well. I didn't find them too heavy. I wasn't overheating with them on either. The cabling, yeah, that's kind of my main gripe. The cabling is quite cumbersome. You know, you do have this big, massive XLR4 thing on here. However, I had a brainwave the other day.
Oh, did you?
And I realised that the cable is obviously detachable, so it detaches from the headphone, so it's interchangeable, right? Now, we did a review of the Deva Pros not too long ago.
I see where this is going.
And I was like, wait a minute, this is the same 3.5mm cables that goes into the... Wonder if... So I took the Deva Pro cable, which is way more simple than this setup.
Yeah.
Plugged it in, and away I went. So, although I think this is not the greatest looking wise or weight wise or length wise, it is changeable. You can buy another cable which is far simpler than this. It doesn't have the XLR4, so if you want to plug this straight into like your amp or whatever, then you know it's not going to be the same. However, it is doable and a bit more minimalist. With this cable, these headphones do require a bit more juice, to get the most out of them. So I would probably recommend, if you've got an amp, that's probably the way to go, or you will be pushing the volume a bit higher. That being said, the kind of sound stage is great, the space, the width is fantastic, and you, as I said, you really feel in the middle of everything when you're sitting listening to music through these headphones. The price is obviously going to be something that comes into question. As you know, at this moment in time, these are about just over 600 quid. And then you've got to kind of put that in the equation. Are these worth £600? From a sound perspective, I'd say yes. Like I've been listening to music, I've been listening to music I've been listening to for years with these. I had a completely different experience listening to the music through these. I heard things that I'd never heard before. So for me, it was worth it to hear those albums almost in a new light. And I feel like I've only just kind of scratched the surface. I feel like there are hundreds of albums more that I could go on and listen to with the HE6SEs and have that experience with. So yeah, 600 quid does sound expensive, but for the sound quality you're getting, I would say it is worth it. I would score these a 4.5 out of 5. That would be my rating for these headphones. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
So yeah, the cable's the big issue for me, and it's like you say, it's not that big an issue. The price point, you probably shouldn't have to buy another cable.
No, true.
At that point, and it came down to what's the use case for a pair of headphones like these. And I'm kind of torn a couple of different ways. The thing that, like you mentioned, if you've got a good quality setup with an amplifier there and you want to plug right into it, then I get the use case. But then the cabling itself is very short, which then I felt like, well, yeah, you can plug them directly in there, but then you're sitting right beside your system. So
yeah,
I just feel that for all the attention that they've done, that's the bit that kind of feels like very little thought's being put into it. The fact you have to plug that cable into another cable, as opposed to just giving the user 3 cables. And the packaging feels confusing to me. It kind of feels like I want it to plug something in, to plug something in, to plug something in.
Yeah.
Because if something does go wrong, and I have to check 3 cables to find out where that thing went wrong. Whereas you could just supply, for the price point, you could just supply 3 cables. That being said, you can just buy another cable. So in the grand scheme of things. Sound-wise, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this, like, £600 sounds a lot, and it is a lot, especially in today's climate. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're buying headphones every other year. You know what I mean? These headphones are not the ones that you wear to go out running, to wear skateboarding, like to wear on the train. These are specifically designed, I would say, for either live sound, so at a desk, mixing sounds, or recording sounds, or for home listening, which is probably like you have a listening room that you listen to your records on or your music on. And for that point, these headphones are going to last you years.
Yeah.
£600 at that doesn't actually seem that unreasonable for the clarity of the sound that we're coming through.
Yeah.
Now, under their original price point, I would have probably said, I think you could probably find more competitive value out there for that. Yeah. But the fact that they've come down in price to the value they're at now, I think more reflects the market and more reflects the value. You get a lot from these. You genuinely do. Very much like Dave, I had a couple of transcendental experiences listening to albums that I am very, very familiar with, that I almost found a brand new appreciation and love for them. So much so that I've been listening to them since, and they're kind of bummed out that I'm not getting the same level. They do fit really nice. I felt they were more noticeable from a feeling point of view. I did feel like I was wearing headphones. The other model that we reviewed, I wasn't that aware of them. But then I think the sound quality is just in general better in these headphones overall. I think 4.5 is the right grade. They're definitely better than the previous ones. I don't think they're a 5. I don't think they're a perfect set. And I'm not just knocking them down because of the cabling. I don't think that they are. I think there are small elements overall. Very much like yourself, I don't think they were more cushion based, but unlike the other pair, I was very acutely aware after a couple of hours. I was like, I'm going to take these off now and give myself a break. But they do breathe, and the material is great as well. So 4.5 for these. Honestly, if you ever walk past a place that you can buy headphones in and they have a pair, just go in and listen to us. Pick a song, and go and listen, and you'll see what I mean. It floored me a little bit. Is that way where you hear a band cover a song? Or a band remasters a track and it comes in, you're like, I never even knew that bit was in there. Or that. And I was getting that with albums that I've been listening to for 20 plus years. It's bizarre. It's bizarre, but in the best possible way. I got very excited about them. So
okay, so that is a review of the HifiMAN HE6se version 2s. I'll put some links below to the headphones so you can check them out online, to Amazon, all that sort of stuff, so you can check them out. I'll put a link to our contact page. If you're looking for us to review any of your tech, let us know. Contact us below. Happy to check out your gear. That is the review. If you've tried these out, if you have a set, let us know. What did you think of them? Stick some comments, some opinions in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is our review of those headphones. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.